What if I told you that this frail old monk, who can't do enough whirling assaults to save his life, can plow through T16s up to even 200 Delirium? This is Kenny17, and I'm very excited to showcase our third iteration of the Fire Monk archetype in 0.5. Combining Hollow Palm, Facebreaker, and Waste of the Stonefist, we stack intelligence for both offense and defense while leveraging some of the cool new runic supports in 0.5. The result is this frail monk spreading fire and mayhem across raid class. There are still a lot of rooms for this build to improve, and we're not running any of the top tier uniques such as Headhunter, Mage Blood, Divinity Amulet, or even Eventide Petals. However, even at its current state, we're working through some of the more challenging contents in the game and doing it in true monk fashion, hands on site. As always, I hope you're enjoying the montage, and we'll go through the build details later in this video. Cheers! Welcome back! I hope you've enjoyed the montage. For this iteration of the Fire Monk archetype build in 0.5, GGG has finally given us enough tools to do a true monk class fire build. Specifically, the core interaction here revolves around the martial artist ascendancy with Ways of the Stonefist notable, and combining it with our new unique gloves introduced in 0.5, Facebreaker. This interaction allows us to stack extra fire damage for unarmed attacks, scaling with intelligence. Additionally, we can combine intelligence scaling with knightly tenets, a keystone available with the Heroic Tragedy Jewel, and ties in evasion scaling also. Overall, this is an unarmed attack build focused on fire damage, scaling both attack and defense respectively by ways of intelligence stacking. For the rest of the video, I'll start with a quick summary of the character sheet, and then deep dive into some of the key ideas behind this build, including how we scale damage, since intelligence scaling by itself is actually not enough. Afterwards, we'll quickly talk about mapping skills, bossing skills, and defense setup respectively. Lastly, I'll also discuss some areas of further improvement as this is still a build in progress. For more build details, there will be a Mobalytics link in the description. At a glance, our character is currently at level 95, with roughly 1.5k life and 1.2k energy shield respectively. In the endgame, these numbers matter very little, and the key defensive layer that ties this together is actually our evasion, sitting nicely at around 31k with all ES/EV hybrid gears. Combining this evasion with some deflection suffix on gears and trees, and we're sitting at around a 82% chance to deflect hits that we do not evade, giving us the much needed damage avoidance and mitigation layers. Given that this is a stacking build, we have the bare minimum strength and dexterity needed for our skills and supports, while investing the rest into intelligence. This strategy takes us to a comfortable 751 intelligence ballpark, even without fully optimized gears. With some efforts at gearing upgrades and passive optimizations, we should be able to hit closer to about 1000 intelligence. Additionally, in terms of the key items needed, we have Facebreaker, Heroic Tragedy Jewel, and Aelith's Chime for power charge generation. A special note on the Heroic Tragedy Jewel, there are 3 different flavors of this jewel out there. Make sure you get the one with Olroth. The actual C number does not actually matter. Outside of the defense and stat details, the rest of the sheet here is pretty straightforward. Do know that we're also taking blood magic here for reasons that we'll get into later in this video. Hence, we do not need to worry about mana nor mana regen. Diving into how we do mapping, I want to start with the core ideas behind damage scaling for this build. The first idea is damage scaling by stacking damage sources when using Hollow Palm. As most folks know, Hollow Palm is considered inferior to Quarterstaff due to its low intrinsic base damage. While intelligence stacking for extra fire damage is important, we cannot solely rely on it to take us to the endgame. Therefore, to further scale damage, we leverage a variety of synergistic skills that trigger along with our Whirling Assault when certain conditions are satisfied, such as heavy stunning or igniting an enemy. With our current setup, and not counting Whirling Assault itself, we actually have 6 additional sources of damage that happens automatically. Wind projectiles from Staggering Palm, Hollow Focus Spells, Hollow Resonance Spell, Fan to Flame explosions, Concussive Ruin explosions, and Smash to Smithereen explosions. Number 1. Wind projectiles are additional attacks that gets added to your current skill after heavy stunning an enemy via Staggering Palm. This is the most straightforward method to boost both damage and AoE, since the resulting projectile pierce all targets and have pretty good screen coverage when combined with multi-shot 2 support. Number 2. Hollow Focus spells come from your Ascendancy notable Hollow Focus. This skill generates semi-transparent bells around you after a certain delay and can be shattered by any of your attacks. Bells destroyed by your skills are considered cold, critically hit, and most importantly, heavily stunned, assuming the skill used directly stuns an enemy that's primed to do so, such as your Staggering Palm. This essentially allows you to proc Staggering Palm Wind projectile buff without needing to build up stun on an actual enemy. Additionally, the bell detonation itself also deals damage in an AoE, giving us a free source of damage. For our specific use case, we slot in supports that give us 2 additional utilities. First, we slot in Wildfire into this skill, which allows Ignite generated by your attacks to spread to nearby enemies. This synergy will become important when we later talk about Fan to Flame support, and also replaces Herald of Ash for Ignite spread while saving us 30 spirits. Second, we slot in Living Lightning 2, Culmination 2, and Aelith's Chime support in that order. This allows the bells to also generate intangible lightning minions that move around and deal damage. Each instance of minion damage serves to increase a combo counter due to your Culmination support, and subsequent damage by the bell allows you to consume the combo for additional damage, while more importantly generate power charge. There is a question in the community on whether the interaction is intended, because Lightning Minion from Living Lightning is what's building up the combo for you. But for now, this is the most convenient way to generate power charge. One final note is that for this interaction to work, you'll either need flat lightning damage source somewhere, such as your ring, or slot in Lightning Attunement to gain lightning as extra damage type. Hollow Resonance is the 3rd additional damage source. This is another Ascendancy notable that gives us a giant bell on our back, which effectively triggers a shockwave explosion whenever you crit an enemy. With our current setup, our chance to crit with Whirling Assault is 100%, which essentially means Hollow Resonance detonates as frequently as its cooldown allows. The support on this skill all focuses on maximizing damage, since the cooldown is relatively low, giving us about 3 detonations a second. Fan to Flame is our 4th additional damage source, and is a support skill that has its own damage component when slotted into an attack wind skill. When slotted into Staggering Palm, Fan to Flame 2 enables the wind projectile to spread the ignite on an already ignited enemy, but more importantly, procs a separate fire explosion that has good coverage and reasonable damage. Our 5th damage component is a new Kalguran support rune in 0.5 called Concussive Ruin. This is a support rune that, when slotted into our Staggering Palm, allows both our palm and wind projectile to detonate a large explosion when heavy stunning an enemy. Because we're using our Staggering Palm to hit primed for stun enemies, or bells in the first place, we can frequently trigger this explosion for a large amount of damage. It is also worth noting that the damage modifier for this skill is about 500% at level 20, which is much higher than the previous damage sources discussed. One final caveat is that the explosion from this support rune does require runic ward. I've opted to runeforge both the glove and the boot slots since I can forego a relatively smaller amount of defense to do so. From personal experience, I found that roughly 150 runic ward is sufficient to have a relatively consistent uptime for this support. Our final damage component is a new skill from the Stonefist version of the Facebreaker unique called Smash to Smithereens. This skill has no socket and essentially triggers another explosion that deals significant fire damage when you heavy stun an enemy, as well as breaking a good bit of armor. This multiplier is also very high at around 500% for level 20 and nicely rounds out the various sources of damage we automate outside a Whirling Assault. With damage skill stacking, we're now halfway there for damage scaling overall. To go further, we scale additional damage via intelligence. As mentioned earlier, Weight of the Stonefist notable drastically transforms Facebreaker affixes into new lines, with the key ones that we care about being gain 1% of unarmed damage as extra fire damage for every 5 intelligence, and 1% increased area of effect for unarmed attacks for 10 intelligence. The area of effect is a good quality of life that, when combined with Whirling Assault, lets us save on passives and support. The unarmed gaining extra fire damage, however, is the meat and potato here. As discussed in our earlier video of maximizing chaos damage, gaining extra damage step is calculated after all base damage and multiplier, but before any increase, more, or damage taken multipliers. What this means is that, while powerful, the extra fire damage is still calculated based on the low hollow palm base damage as discussed. Additionally, combining this extra damage along with the base means we have a mix of physical and fire damage. This also means that for damage increase nodes on the passive tree, we want to avoid scalars such as increased physical or increased fire damage, because that will benefit only a part of our full damage package. As a result, the most efficient and direct way of scaling our mix of physical and fire damage becomes crit scaling. With about 750 intelligence converted, we're sitting at around 150% of extra damage gain as fire, which is very significant, especially when combined with the damage skill stacking discussed previously. With the 2 key damage scaling mechanics explained, there are a few more conscious build decisions that I want to call out. Even though we're using Facebreaker, we are avoiding mace skills for 2 reasons. First is simply because the strength requirement will mean less investment for intelligence, and we want to maximize our intelligence. Second, Facebreaker bonuses apply to both mace and quarterstaff skills, while hollow palm technique bonuses apply to quarterstaff skills only, which means we are a lot more efficient for both attack speed and crit chance scaling when focusing on using quarterstaff skills while being unarmed. Another conscious decision made here is that we're not taking Avatar of Fire, even though we are taking Split Personality Ruby to path on the warrior side of the tree. We do this for a few reasons. First, hollow palm base damage is relatively low, and we really want to avoid further damage reduction if we can. Recall that for Avatar of Fire, it allows no non-fire damage after only a 75% damage conversion efficiency. Second, we can already get a sizable amount of fire damage from Facebreaker intelligence bonus. Third, we prefer our damage to be a mix of physical and fire versus pure fire because physical damage has a bonus to stun buildup. This stun buildup actually synergizes nicely with all the conditional damage skill stacking previously mentioned. Recall specifically that Smash to Smithering breaks armor after heavy stun, which means we can also path down to Molten One's Gift for fully broken armor effects to benefit both our physical and fire damage type. This then actually ties back as another reason why we're not running mace skills mentioned earlier, since all mace skills using Facebreaker will deal fire damage only. Finally, this build also utilizes Split Personality Ruby to enable access to a few key notables and passive clusters. First, for attack crit scaling, there are 2 groups of passives on the tree. The first lives around the monk start, and the other lives around the warrior start. With Split Personality, we gain access to both without needing to invest on crit suffix for gears, which really alleviates gearing pressure. Second, we grab blood magic on the warrior side because our intelligence does not scale mana anyways due to heroic tragedy, something that we'll talk about later in this video. This actually synergizes with some of our crit nodes on the warrior side that gives downside to max mana, which for us also becomes irrelevant. Lastly, Molten One's Gift, a notable that allows for fully broken armor debuff to apply to our fire damage in addition to physical, also lives on the southwest part of the tree. Our warrior star enables easy access and opens up our annoying slot for Zarok's Gift for further in-stacking instead. So that was all the main ideas behind the build, including 2 key components of damage scaling, as well as some other key points. Let's now move on to the skills used during mapping and bossing, which are a lot more straightforward. During mapping, we use Wind Blast to daze and prime enemies for stun, then Staggering Palm either to primed enemies or the bells to gain wind projectiles. Then we essentially spin to win via Whirling Assault. Many of the Hollow Palm builds out there use Tempest Flurry or even Ice Strike over Whirling Assault due to the much smaller Whirling Assault base damage scaling. We can get away with Whirling Assault due to the damage scaling factors mentioned above, and also take advantage of the area of effect instead. We can also leverage Tempest Bell during mapping to break particular tough packs or rares. Additionally, Falling Thunder is periodically used to clear out really tricky packs where you otherwise have to dive into dangerous ground effects, as well as for nuking bosses. Finally, we also reserve a skill slot for Hand of Chayula for bossing, slotting in Elemental Weakness and Sniper's Mark to make the enemy more susceptible to fire damage and critical hits, respectively. Now we can move on to defense, and boy am I surprised by the findings, even though it might not be news to everyone. In short, evasion plus deflection plus ghost dance are insane for a evasion/energy shield hybrid setup. First thing first, because we're stacking intelligence for damage, we also leverage Heroic Tragedy Jewel. TLDR, this jewel changes all the surrounding nodes of your passive tree, including Keystone. Depending on which hero the jewel represents, Varana, Olroth, or Medved, the Keystone will change to a different type. The large number that goes in front of the jewel's description is more related to the way that the rest of the notables within the jewel radius will be changed to, and we do not care about that for this build. As long as you're getting an Olroth Heroic Tragedy Jewel, you can get the Keystone Knightly Tenets, which ties all your intelligence into evasion increase. Couple this with the Winter Owl notable, and you have a bona fide evasion stacking build. Ensure you couple the evasion increase with deflection rating on your gear suffix, and you can get both your avoidance and mitigation layer. Moving on to now why we're still sticking to ES/EV hybrid gear, this is to take advantage of the Ghost Dance passive. In short, Ghost Dance regenerates your energy shield for 4 seconds after taking a hit, as long as you have a stack of Ghost Shroud in which you gain periodically. With about 31k evasion rating that we have, you are actually regenerating about 620 energy shield per second, for a total of about 2400 energy shield over 4 seconds, all without interruption. This fills up your ES to full, and the combined ES life pool can nicely cushion you against many one-shots in the game in case your deflection also fails to kick in. One side note about Knightly Tenet is that it removes the intrinsic benefit of intelligence, which is mana scaling, and that is another reason why we moved to Blood Magic to avoid mana issues entirely. Overall, I'm very pleasantly surprised that this basic method of building defense actually functions insanely well in the late game, especially when you add in a few key scaling for evasion. However, one thing you do want to take note of are the ground effects, as evasion intrinsically does not interact with them. This is where Falling Thunder actually acts as a defensive tool. When coupled with Power Charge, Falling Thunder effectively becomes a one-time range nuke skill where you can blast down mobs without needing to get close and deal with those pesky ground effects. For this section on further improvements for the build, it's going to be a little bit more off the cuff and unscripted. TLDR, I think the next key things to look at for further pushing this build into the late game and into, 8 mod, 200 Delirium, or even Grand Expedition is probably going to be on the gearing side. I think I mentioned this before, but the gearing is not fully optimized for intelligence stacking. Mainly, if you look at the ring right here, I do not have intelligence suffix on this item in particular. I do have it on the rest, like my amulet, my helm, my armor. Actually, sorry, I take that back. I also need intelligence stacking on my armor, which I do not have at the moment, as well as ring, shoes, and and actually one side note, runic meridian, we're just slotting in intelligence room. So we can definitely have some improvements there in terms of ring. It's a little bit hard to do for this one because the rest of the affix here is actually super busted. It actually gives me a bunch of DPS. So either I can do like a whittle and chaos and pray, or some other way to kind of try to add in the intelligence, but something I need to do. Additionally, the next few things I am thinking of doing will essentially start to cost a lot of money, is replacing the Ingenuity with a Mage Blood. Ingenuity gives us a lot of bonuses on the ring, but I think Mage Blood definitely surpasses that. I think in particular what I'm looking at is Legacy of Jade, which gives us a flat amount, I think 2,000 evasion rating, which is really good, considering that we are scaling very heavy into increased evasion, right? So it's kind of multiplicative with each other. The second thing that I probably want to grab on the Mage Blood would be Legacy of Sulfur. This is the one that gives you increased attack damage, which again is actually very much synergistic because it's multiplicative with the unarmed damage as extra fire damage, right? They multiply with each other. So for us, it's actually a great way to scale because if you look at our passive tree, it's actually mostly travel nodes, so we actually don't have that many sources of increased damage. So that's actually great, right? So we don't run into the issue of diminishing return there. So those would be the two key things. And finally, I think this helmet definitely has a little bit more room to improve, especially in terms of the EVES amount that I could get. But once I get a more or a closer best in slot helmet, I'll probably want to look for Alder's Legacy with, I think, Gray Maid or Gray Mead or whatever it's called. That gives you plus 50 attribute. I think it's Legacy of Gray Make. There you go. I think it's like 400 div right now. 300. Oh, cool. Yeah, it's cheaper now. But right, this one gives a plus 50 to all attributes. So that obviously will let us scale intelligence a lot further, and also probably help save a lot of the pathing here, because I'm taking beef here to get kind of the, because I need still some strength, for all my support. So if I get it from that, I don't need to pass up here, then probably I'll, forego even all of these nodes path down here and take this dual socket instead, and I can, come down here and take Polymathy or even Jack of all trade or something, or crystallize the immunity. There's a lot of great nodes down here. And I do actually have another Megalomania. So right now my Megalomania, I have Fulmination, Polymathy. I have another Megalomania that is Fulmination, and I think the node that gives Train Deflection. So this, gives a lot more survivability. By the way, Fulmination is just the one that gives increased damage against ignited enemies here, and you are igniting everything, right? But again, yeah, just TLDR, probably looking to further optimize to get some intel suffix on the armor as well as the ring, Mage Blood upgrade, as well as the helm upgrade, along with an Elder's Legacy. Essentially, most of those are pretty big ticket item, and farming for those is quite slow, obviously. Again, I have about 1 to 2 hours of playtime a day, so really farming for those, you can see I still think that I'm making reasonable progress towards, I think Mage Blood right now is like close to 400 div still. I might make another video on kind of, less about how to do it, because there's a ton of great resource out there, but more for, again, folks like us who only spend like 1 to 2 hours gaming per day for POE2. What is the mindset you need to not get frustrated and kind of still enjoy the game while you're farming towards those big ticket items, right? So maybe I'll make a video on that. But yeah, hopefully that kind of, addresses the big items in my mind in terms of improvement. And if there's anything else that you think also needs optimization, feel free to let me know. So I think that wraps up everything I want to talk about for this build. Overall, I'm very happy with the state of the build so far. There are definitely some space for further improvement, as we discussed, but I'm confident that once some of those big ticket uniques get incorporated, we'll be able to get into the final echelon of ultra late game such as 200% Delirium plus 8 mod T16s, Older Legacy Grand Expedition runs, and just general bunker clears of some of the most difficult contents in the game. Lastly, apologies for this Fire Monk hitting the league at a later time than planned. But if you're still planning to stick around for this POE2 league, I hope this video is of some use and perhaps shows you some tips or tricks that can be used for your next character. For the upcoming projects, I think I've finally decided to play a Chobra Chapter build with Disciple of Varashta Ascendancy for some spicy interactions, as well as continue to refine this build further into the ultra late endgame. In parallel, I'm also planning to sprinkle in some perspective and open discussion videos on playing POE2 as a quote-unquote casual gamer, since I do feel that most of us need to balance this game with many other real-life responsibilities, and having the right mindset while playing is key. TLDR, comparison is the thief of joy. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this iteration of Fire Monk, and I hope to see you soon in the next one. Cheers!